In the deepest, darkest corners of space, where stars whisper ancient secrets, a vessel existed that defied all understanding. For 300 years, the massive ship had drifted in silence, its hull scarred by battles long forgotten, its corridors dark and still. Those who knew its name spoke it only in hushed tones, for this was the Requiem, humanity's last and greatest creation, now a tomb floating among the void. Lieutenant James Torres pressed his palm against the viewport of his scout vessel, watching the enormous ship grow larger as they approached. At 31, he had spent his entire military career hearing stories about the Requiem, but seeing it in person stole his breath away. The ship was cathedral-like in its construction, spanning nearly 5 kilometers from bow to stern, its surface etched with symbols and patterns that seemed to shift and shimmer in the starlight. Beside him stood engineer Rebecca Walsh, her fingers dancing across a data pad as she recorded every detail. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a practical bun, revealing a face lined with intense concentration. At 43, she was one of the few people alive who had actually studied the original blueprints of the Requiem, though most of those documents had been deliberately destroyed centuries ago. Their third team member, Medical Officer David Chen, floated near the rear of the scout ship, his dark eyes reflecting both a deep fear and a powerful fascination. He was the youngest at 27, fresh from the academy, and had initially thought this would be a routine archaeological expedition. How terribly wrong he had been. The mission had seemed straightforward when command briefed them 6 weeks ago. A recent spatial anomaly had shifted the Requiem's position, bringing it dangerously close to the trade routes near the outer colonies. Their orders were simple: survey the vessel, ensure it posed no navigational hazard, and file a report. Simple documentation. Nothing more. But James had noticed something in the eyes of Admiral Patricia Hoffman during that briefing, a weight of unspoken knowledge, a heavy burden she could not share. She had pulled him aside afterward, gripping his shoulder with an unusual intensity. "Whatever you find on that ship, Lieutenant," she'd said, "remember that some weapons are too terrible to use. That is why we chose to forget." Now, as their small craft drifted through the debris field surrounding the Requiem, James understood why the old admiral had looked so haunted. The wreckage told a story of the final battle of the War of Convergence, when 5 alien armadas had descended upon Earth simultaneously, each species believing humanity would be easy prey. Fragments of those ships still orbited the Requiem like a graveyard, twisted metal and shattered hulls bearing silent witness to their fatal miscalculation. Rebecca's voice cut through his thoughts, steady and analytical. "External scans show minimal damage to the primary hull. Whatever happened here, it happened quickly. The attacking forces never breached the outer defenses." She looked up from her pad, and James saw the question in her eyes that neither of them wanted to ask aloud. What kind of weapon could destroy 5 entire armadas without sustaining any significant damage itself? David pushed off from the wall, joining them at the viewport. His voice trembled slightly as he spoke. "My grandmother used to tell stories about this ship. She said it was built during the dark years after first contact, when humanity realized we were not alone, and that the universe was far more hostile than we had ever imagined. She said the Requiem was powered by something that should never have been created, something that required a terrible sacrifice." James turned to face him. "What kind of sacrifice?" The young medic shrugged, his expression troubled. "She never said. Or maybe she didn't know. The records from that era are spotty at best. After the war ended, there was this massive effort to erase certain technologies from human knowledge. The Requiem was supposed to be destroyed, but instead, they just sent it out here, away from everything, away from everyone." Their conversation was interrupted by a sharp beep from the navigation console. Rebecca moved quickly to investigate, her fingers flying across the controls. "We have a problem. Multiple contacts approaching fast." She pulled up a tactical display, and James felt his stomach drop. 8 ships, closing in formation. The configuration matched the Krell sovereignty. The Krell weren't enemies, not officially, but they were aggressive scavengers who respected only strength. They had been expanding their territory for decades, probing human defenses, testing boundaries. If they reached the Requiem first, if they learned its secrets, the fragile peace that had held for 3 centuries would shatter into a million pieces. James made his decision in an instant. Plot an intercept course. We are boarding the Requiem now before they arrive. Rebecca's head snapped up. Sir, we don't have clearance for boarding. Our orders were observation only. Our orders didn't account for the Krell showing up, he shot back. If they get inside that ship first, they will find things that should stay lost. He moved to the pilot station, taking manual control. David, prep the boarding equipment. Rebecca, start running interference protocols. If we're lucky, we can buy ourselves 20 minutes before they realize we're already inside. The scout ship accelerated, cutting across the debris field with practiced precision. James had flown in far worse conditions during the border skirmishes, weaving through asteroid fields while hostile forces pursued him. This was dangerous, but it was manageable. What waited for them inside the Requiem, however, was an entirely different matter. As they approached the massive ship's primary airlock, Rebecca activated the docking sequence. To everyone's astonishment, the ancient mechanisms responded immediately. Green lights flickered to life along the docking port, and the massive doors began to slide open with a low, resonant hum that they could feel even through the vacuum of space. That should not be possible, Rebecca whispered. This ship has been without power for 300 years. The system should be completely dead. David checked his medical scanner, his face suddenly paling. I'm reading biosignatures inside. Faint, but present. Multiple sources. James felt a cold chill run down his spine. That's impossible. No one has been aboard this vessel since the final crew sealed it and abandoned ship. There shouldn't be anything alive in there. The airlock finished opening, revealing a corridor beyond that glowed with a soft, eerie blue light. The illumination pulsed gently, rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat. And then, from deep within the ship, they heard a sound that should not exist in the vacuum of space. It was a low thrumming that resonated in their bones, calling to something ancient and primal in their minds. The Requiem was waking up, and humanity's final weapon, dormant for 3 centuries, was beginning to remember what it was built to do. What happens next? What is the terrible secret of the Requiem, and what kind of sacrifice did it require? Find out in the next part of our story. If you enjoyed this, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the thrilling conclusion. Thanks for watching. The corridor stretched before them like the throat of some immense beast, its walls lined with conduits that pulsed with that eerie blue light. James led the way, his magnetic boots clicking against the metal floor with each step, the sound echoing far too loudly in the oppressive silence. Behind him, Rebecca kept one hand on the wall, her scanner held out in front of her like a talisman against the unknown. David brought up the rear, his medical kit clutched tightly to his chest, eyes darting nervously at every shadow. The air inside the Requiem should have been frozen, dead for centuries, but instead it was breathable. More than breathable, it was warm, carrying a faint metallic tang mixed with something else James could not identify, something organic. As they moved deeper into the ship, the biosignatures on Rebecca's scanner grew stronger, multiplying. Whatever was alive inside this vessel, there was a lot of it. They passed through what had once been crew quarters, the doors standing open like empty eyes. Personal effects still remained. Pictures of loved ones faded but visible. Uniforms hanging in lockers, tablets resting on bunks displaying frozen text from 300 years ago. It was as if the crew had simply vanished mid-routine, leaving everything behind. James picked up one of the tablets, its screen flickering to life at his touch. The final entry was dated the day the Requiem went dark. The words made his blood run cold. We have succeeded beyond our darkest fears. The prototype has exceeded all parameters. 5 enemy fleets destroyed in under 3 hours. Not a single enemy survivor, not one. But the cost, God help us, the cost. Captain Morrison has ordered immediate evacuation. The integration process cannot be reversed. They are becoming something else now, something we cannot control. We are sealing the ship and pray that no one ever finds this place. Pray that no one ever awakens what we have created. May God forgive us for what we have done in the name of survival. Rebecca read over his shoulder, her voice barely above a whisper. Integration process. What does that mean? James shook his head, but David spoke up, his medical knowledge providing context they wished they did not have. During the early war years, there were rumors of experimental programs, biological augmentation taken to extremes. They were trying to create soldiers who could interface directly with ship systems, who could react faster than any AI, who could anticipate enemy movements through some kind of neural network. The programs were all supposed to have been shut down after the ethical committees reviewed them. Supposed to have been, Rebecca repeated, her tone grim. But the Requiem was a black project. No oversight, no limits. She looked around the corridor with new understanding and new horror. This entire ship might be the experiment, one massive integration chamber. A sound echoed from deeper within the vessel, a wet, slithering noise that set their teeth on edge. James raised his hand, signaling for silence. They waited, barely breathing, as the sound grew closer. From around a corner ahead, something emerged into the corridor. At first, James thought it was wearing a spacesuit. The figure was roughly human-shaped, moving with a lurching gait. But as it drew closer, he realized with mounting dread that what he was seeing was not a suit at all. It was skin, or what had once been skin, now transformed into something that resembled the ship's hull. Metallic plates had grown through the flesh. Cables sprouted from joints like technological veins, and the face was the worst part. Still recognizably human but frozen in an expression of eternal anguish, eyes replaced by glowing blue optics that swept the corridor with mechanical precision. The thing that had once been human stopped, its head tilting at an unnatural angle as it focused on the three intruders. When it spoke, the voice came from multiple sources, echoing from the walls themselves, harmonized with the ship's systems. "You should not be here. The Requiem sleeps. The weapon rests. Why have you come to wake us?" James found his voice, though it took effort. "We mean no harm. We are just conducting a survey." The creature made a sound that might have been laughter, a grinding mechanical noise mixed with something wetly organic. Just a survey. How many times has that lie been told? How many times have outsiders come claiming peace while seeking power? It took a step forward, and they heard other sounds now, more movement in the corridors around them, converging on their position. "We were soldiers once, the finest humanity had to offer. They promised us glory, promised us we would save our species. Instead, they made us into this, fused with the ship, unable to die, unable to leave. For 300 years, we have waited in darkness, feeling every moment, aware of every second of our imprisonment." More figures emerged from side corridors, a dozen of them, each a horrific fusion of human and machine. Some had multiple limbs, others had bodies that seemed to flow into the walls themselves, connected by umbilical cables that pulsed with data and nutrients. Their faces all bore that same expression of frozen suffering, conscious minds trapped in bodies they no longer controlled, serving a ship that would not let them go. David's voice cracked as he spoke. "How many of you are there?" The first creature's head rotated completely around, a movement no human spine should allow. 3,417. The original crew complement. "We are the Requiem now. We are the weapon. And we have been so very lonely." Rebecca's scanner was screaming warnings, but she kept her voice steady. "The Krell ships will be here in 15 minutes. If you do not want outsiders finding this place, we need to help you hide." Another sound that might have been laughter. "Hide? We are a 5-kilometer warship. There is no hiding." Besides, the creatures said, and now all of them spoke in unison, their voices blending into a chorus of despair and something darker. "Why would we hide? For 3 centuries we have existed in silence, 3 centuries of darkness and pain. Now you have awakened us. Now we feel the approach of potential enemies, and we remember what we were built to do." The blue lights throughout the corridor began to pulse faster, and James felt a vibration building in the deck plates beneath his feet. Throughout the vast ship, systems that had lain dormant were coming back online, weapon arrays unfolding from their housings, shield generators spinning up to full power, the massive reactor core, powered by technology that was deliberately forgotten, surging back to life. "No," James said firmly. "You cannot attack the Krell. It will start another war. Everything your sacrifice was meant to prevent will be for nothing." The creatures regarded him with their glowing eyes, and for a moment, he thought he saw something human flicker in those mechanical depths. "Sacrifice," the lead creature repeated. "You call this a sacrifice? Look at us, Lieutenant Torres. We are aware. We are conscious. We feel everything. The hunger of the ship, the cold of space, The passage of every endless second, we did not sacrifice ourselves. We were murdered, transformed without consent. And now you ask us to continue suffering for the sake of peace? What peace have we known? The ship shuddered and alarms began to sound. Rebecca checked her scanner, her face going white. The Krell vessels are hailing the Requiem. They are demanding access. James knew they had only moments to make a decision. If the Requiem destroyed the Krell ships, it would spark a war that could consume the entire sector. But if the Krell boarded and discovered the true nature of this vessel, they would either try to weaponize it for themselves or destroy it out of fear. Either option would be catastrophic. He looked at the creatures before him, seeing past the horror of their transformation to the soldiers they had been, people who had trusted their commanders, people who had believed they were doing the right thing, people who deserved better than to be forgotten, sealed away like a shameful secret. "I cannot imagine what you have endured," he said slowly, "and I will not insult you by claiming to understand, but you are still human, still capable of choice. You proved that by not attacking us immediately. You can prove it again now." The lead creature tilted its head. "And what choice would you have us make, Lieutenant?" James took a deep breath. "Help us, not for peace, not for humanity, but because you deserve to finally rest, and we will make sure the truth is told. No more secrets, no more lies. The world will know what was done to you, and we will make sure nothing like this ever happens again." The creatures were silent, and the ship seemed to hold its breath with them. The Krell transmission came again, more insistent now. 10 minutes until boarding. The choice hung in the balance, and with it, the fate of millions. The silence stretched like a blade against their throats. James could hear his own heartbeat thundering in his ears, could feel the weight of 3,000 transformed souls considering his words. The blue lights pulsed slower now, almost contemplative, and he realized the ship itself was thinking, processing, deciding through the collective consciousness of those who had become one with it. Finally, the lead creature spoke, but this time its voice was different. Softer, more human. "There was a name once, before the integration, before we became this." His voice cracked with emotion that should not have been possible through mechanical vocal cords. "Sergeant Nathan Pierce. I had a daughter, Emily. She was 7 when I volunteered for this mission. They told us we would be heroes, that we would come home." The other creatures began to speak too, one by one, their voices overlapping in a haunting chorus. "I was Private Jessica Reeves. I loved painting watercolors. I was Corporal Thomas Zhang. I played violin in the colony orchestra. I was Lieutenant Michelle Santos. I was going to marry my sweetheart when I returned." Each name was a ghost made, real. A person emerging from the nightmare of their transformation. David was crying openly now, his medical training making him understand the full horror of what had been done to these people. The neural integration would have left them fully conscious throughout the entire process. They had felt every moment of their humanity being stripped away, every second of their bodies being fused with metal and circuitry. 300 years of awareness without sleep, without rest, without relief. Rebecca stepped forward, her scanner forgotten in her hand. Her voice was thick with emotion. "My grandmother served on the orbital defense platforms during the war. She spoke about you, the crew of the Requiem. She said you were the bravest people she had ever known, that you saved billions of lives. We owe you everything." The creatures seemed to draw closer, and James saw something he had not expected: hope, fragile and faint, but present in those glowing optical sensors that had replaced their eyes. "You will tell them," Nathan Pierce asked. "You will make sure they remember us as we were, not as we became?" James nodded, his own throat tight. "I swear it. On my honor as an officer and as a human being. The world will know your names. Every single one of you. Your families will know you did not abandon them, that you did not choose this, that you were heroes who paid a price no one should ever have to pay." A shudder ran through the ship, but this time it felt different. Not threatening, but almost like a sigh of relief. The Krell vessels were close now, their aggressive posturing clear even through the vacuum of space. They saw the Requiem as salvage, a prize to be claimed. They had no idea what they were approaching. Nathan turned his transformed head toward the main corridor, toward the heart of the ship. "There is a way," he said quietly. The integration was designed to be permanent, but the original scientists included a failsafe. They called it the Mercy Protocol. It was meant to be used if the experiment failed, if we became unstable or dangerous. We can activate it. The ship will shut down completely. All systems, all functions, and we will finally be allowed to die. Rebecca gasped. But if you shut down the ship now, with the Krell right on top of us, we will all be trapped here. Nathan's mechanical face somehow conveyed sadness. No. The protocol includes an emergency beacon and life support for the survey areas. You will have enough time to be rescued, but you must leave now. This is our choice, our last act of service. Not for humanity, for ourselves, for the peace we have been denied. David stepped forward, his medical bag still clutched tight. Is there pain? In the shutdown process, will you suffer? The creatures looked at each other and James saw something pass between them, some communication beyond words. Nathan spoke for them all. We have been suffering for 300 years, Doctor. Whatever comes next cannot be worse than what we have endured. But thank you for asking. Thank you for seeing us as people who can still feel pain. That matters more than you know. James felt his chest constrict with emotion he could barely contain. This was wrong. Everything about this was wrong. These people should never have been put in this position, should never have had to make this choice. But he also understood that after 3 centuries of torment, they had earned the right to decide their own fate. How long do we have? He asked quietly. 10 minutes until the Krell arrive. The protocol takes 5 minutes to initiate and execute. Nathan's voice held a note of something that might have been peace. You should go now, Lieutenant. Tell our story. Make sure this never happens again. Make sure no government, no military, no desperate leader ever thinks that this is an acceptable price to pay for victory. The 3 of them stood there, none wanting to be the first to turn away, to leave these brave souls to their final rest. Then Rebecca moved forward and did something extraordinary. She reached out and placed her hand on Nathan's transformed arm, touching the horror of what he had become without flinching. Thank you, she whispered, for everything you sacrificed. For everything you endured. I promise we will remember. David added his hand to another creature's shoulder. Then James followed, touching the cold metal and warm flesh of beings who had given up everything. One by one, the other transformed. Crew members came forward, and for a brief, precious moment there was connection. Not fear, not horror, just acknowledgement between human beings. Then alarms began to sound. The Krell were hailing again, more aggressive now, preparing to board. It is time, Nathan said gently. Go now. Live well. Tell our families we loved them. Tell the world we were soldiers who deserved better. And please remember us as we were, not as we became. They ran then, boots pounding against metal floors as they raced back toward their scout ship. Behind them, they heard the sound of the Mercy Protocol initiating, a deep thrumming that resonated through every deck, every corridor. The blue lights began to fade, one section at a time, darkness spreading like a peaceful blanket across the massive vessel. James was the last to board, pausing at the airlock to look back one final time. In the dimming light, he saw the transformed crew members standing in formation, facing toward the center of the ship, toward whatever end awaited them. They stood like soldiers on parade, proud and unbroken despite everything that had been done to them. As the scout ship pulled away, the requiem went dark, not violently, not explosively, but gently, like someone falling asleep after a long and terrible vigil. The massive warship that had saved humanity at such terrible cost was finally at rest, its crew released from their imprisonment. The Krell vessels arrived moments later, finding only a dead hulk and a small human scout ship broadcasting a priority distress signal. Whatever salvage they had hoped to claim was gone, all systems completely inert, all secrets buried forever. 3 days later, James stood before a joint session of the Colonial Council, Rebecca and David flanking him. In his hands, he held a Awoke datapad containing 3,417 names. Behind him, a holographic display showed pictures recovered from the requiem, Images of people as they had been before the transformation. Young faces full of hope and courage. Parents and children, artists and dreamers. Ordinary people who had become extraordinary in the worst possible way. He spoke for 4 hours, telling every detail, sparing nothing. When he finished, the chamber was silent except for the sound of weeping. That same day, construction began on a memorial. Not a monument to victory, but a testament to sacrifice. Each of the 3,417 names was carved in stone, along with their stories, their dreams, their lives as they had lived them. The memorial bore a simple inscription at its base, words that Nathan Pierce had spoken in those final moments. We were human. We remain human. Remember us. And humanity did remember. Laws were passed. Forbidden technologies were cataloged and sealed. Oversight committees were established with real power. The mistakes of the past would not be repeated. James visited the memorial every year on the anniversary of that day. He would stand before the wall of names, reading them aloud, making sure they were not forgotten. Rebecca and David came too, and eventually others joined them. Families of the crew, fellow soldiers, citizens who understood the debt that could never truly be repaid. On the 5th anniversary, an old woman approached James. Her hair was white, her face lined with age, but her eyes were sharp and bright. She looked up at the memorial, at one name in particular. Sergeant Nathan Pierce. He was my father, she said quietly. Emily Pierce. I never knew what happened to him. They told us he died in the war, but never gave us details. Thank you for bringing him back to me. Thank you for letting me know he never stopped being my father, even when they tried to take his humanity away. James took her hand, feeling the weight of the promise he had made lift just a little. He never stopped, he assured her. None of them did. They stayed human until the very end, and that is the greatest victory of all. Above them, stars wheeled across the night sky. Somewhere out there, the Requiem drifted in eternal silence, a tomb and a warning. Its crew had finally found peace, but their story lived on. A reminder that some prices are too high to pay, that some victories cost more than they are worth, and that humanity's greatest strength lies not in the weapons we create, but in our ability to remember, to honor, and to choose a better path forward. The memorial stood as proof that even in the darkest times, even when transformed beyond recognition, the human spirit could endure, could choose mercy over vengeance, could find dignity in sacrifice, could at the very last find peace. And in that peace they had given humanity something more valuable than any weapon. They had given them a conscience. They had given them a reason to be better. They had given them hope that no matter what horrors the universe held, humanity would face them not by becoming monsters, but by remembering what it meant to be human. The end.